Hey, I want to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, so today is a very special episode. Today we have Rodney Brice Campbell on the line. He is co-founder and chief vision officer over at More in Common. And he's also, I'm proud to announce, along with his other co-founder, Keith Richardson, newly published authors in our best-selling Business Leaders book series. Hey, Rodney, just want to say welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right, Rodney. So last time, for some of my viewers, they may remember the company. So More in Common, great name, great mission. Last time we had the other co-founder on the line, Keith Richardson, and this time we finally got you on the show. Been trying to get you on the show for a long time. So we got a lot to talk about today. We'll be talking about really retention, solving workplace problems, a new paradigm of what's happening in the workplace. A lot of different things that we're going to cover. But before we get into any of that, we'll start this episode the way that we start them all. You know the drill, with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Rodney, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Rodney, what mission matters to you?
We are anchoring humanity and humans in compassion and compassionate conversation for the sake of making more productive human connection. And with that, we're all about creating productive experiences that build trust, accelerate growth, and inspire personal development. And we're using and leveraging compassion tactically daily in our lives to make our teams, our businesses, and frankly, ourselves and our families better.
It's fantastic. Love bringing mission-based individuals on the line to share, why they do what they do, how they do it, and really what we can all learn from that so that we can all grow together. Whole point of the Mission Matters platform is we want to see individuals, we want to see leaders grow. So great having you on again. And I always like to ask this question and bring this up because I'm telling you, I've interviewed a lot of different co-founders and there's different sides of the story. So man, I'm so interested to get your side of the story, like More in Common. We heard it from Keith's side, from your side. Like, how did all this come about?
Look, we like to go about things backwards here at More in Common. So 2016, I'm gonna take you back. We're gonna go in the Wayback Machine real quick.
Take me.
2016, Colin Kaepernick starts kneeling for the national anthem. And Keith calls me and he's like, what do you think about it? And I'm a fan of the 49ers. I'm a fan of the football team, but I was not aware that this was happening yet. So I was like, I don't know. I'm on my way to a meeting. Let me get back with you. Fast forward to later in the day, I caught up with ESPN. I figured out what was happening. And I called him back. I was like, hey, man, like he's protesting police rights, rights for Black folk and people of color in the nation. I was like, okay, I'm with it. And he said, I don't like it. And inside, in my heart, I was very hurt. I was very upset because I felt like he didn't see me. But my response was, why don't you like it? And what ensued was a very long conversation, maybe 4 hours or so. And we just talked about it. And I got to understand why he didn't like it and what the flag meant to him and the way he was interpreting it. And then he asked me, why do you like it? And I got to share. And what we realized is that we both got to be seen and heard by each other. And we weren't trying to I wasn't trying to convince him to be on my side. He wasn't trying to convince me. And afterwards, I was like, hey, man, we need to start a podcast. And he was like, I don't know what a podcast is, but I'm in. And we start the More in Common podcast. And through the stories and the lessons and really understanding how Keith and I come together and create safety and like a space where we can share the deep truths about who we are, it turned into this experience of, hey, we're going to go coach and consult. We had a vice president at our company say, hey, we want to put on a DEI session. Can somebody do it? And I was like, I've never taught, and I'm going to do it. And we turned our relationship, our friendship into the More philosophy, and have used that to teach compassion and to teach how we can make the inclusive spaces and teams that we all want.
Now, Rodney, so I feel like that conversation is pretty. It's kind of an uncommon one in terms
Mm.
of like the outcome, because I feel like a lot of good came from it. But that wasn't your first conversation like that, or was it?
Oh
I don't
no.
know, between you and Keith, like, because that's a different level of like conversation, especially 4 hours on that to have a logical conversation.
Yeah, it was not our first. That's a fact. Man, in college, we would have all of the conversations. We grew up very different, politically, religiously,
Mm-hmm.
financially. Like we grew up on almost opposites on all of those things.
Yeah.
So when we met in college, I'm not kidding you. We would be in the weight room pushing around weights, talking about gay rights legislation. We would be talking about gun rights. We were talking about the financial status of the country and what we should be doing. And
Man, that's it. That's not what I was talking about in college when I was in the weight room.
right? Like these meatheads pushing weights,
That's
like, oh, well,
uncommon.
what did you think about the financial decision yesterday? Yeah, that's where it was. And you know what we found is that we
Mm,
had a mutual kernel of respect for
mhm,
each other. And so we just didn't feel like we had respect and we were safe enough to just say what we thought.
mhm.
We weren't really, I guess we didn't care if we judged each other, but it turns out
Yeah,
we weren't judging each other. We
yeah.
respected each other enough to want to hear what the other perspective was. And
Mm.
through it, we've both grown a whole lot. And now we're helping other people grow.
Yeah, I think, and I bring that up, by the way, because this wasn't an isolated incident. It wasn't one conversation. It was, and I think it's one of the things that makes your firm so special is that it's really almost as if you were both, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you were kind of figuring out your material and how to make that relationship. It wasn't even a professional relationship at that point. It was just a
Correct.
friendship, right? How to make that friendship work. And
Yeah.
so now when we think about like how to make professional relationships work and other things in the workplace, like that was an evolution, right?
It was absolutely an evolution. And, it didn't start off as a professional relationship. But when we
Yeah.
graduated, we quickly started working together. And it worked out well because there were
Mm,
moments where we were on the same team
yeah.
and had different roles and we had to get through some tough situations. Like I was an engineer.
Mhm,
Not typically known for being really in touch with emotions,
mhm,
and I was into technical writing, very uh, this is what is. And we had a
yeah.
situation where I responded to a customer and it was just very much like cut and dry.
Mm,
And that customer was not happy with my response. And
mm,
Keith came back. He's like, "Hey, man, you just like let's add a little bit of personality, a little bit of emotion. Like this was a tough situation for this customer, and you just said nope." And but we had built that relationship over time, which is a lot of the process that we use when we're teaching people. This isn't just like a hey, we're going to teach you something and we're going to walk away and you're going to get it.
mm,
This takes it's a lot of hard work and time that goes
yeah.
into it.
Well, let's we have a lot what we're of course going to be talking about this book that we just launched together.
Hmm.
I'm thrilled to have published both your and Keith's work. But before we go into the book and everything else, maybe just let's just pause for a moment and tell us
Sure.
more about More in Common, the firm, and what you do.
Yeah. So like I said at the beginning, like our mission is compassion.
Mm,
We anchor people, businesses, leaders in the idea of compassion. Um, and in so doing, we teach cohorts. We work with large groups of teams. We teach individuals. We do some one-on-one coaching,
mm,
and we really help walk individuals on this path of figuring out who they are and where they are and how are they entering the building.
mm,
Beyond that, how are they entering the boardroom or the meeting, and how is that affecting the interaction with the other person or people across
mm,
from them? And beyond that, like the more philosophy, the approach
mhm,
is really about taking this idea compassion. Like a lot of people hear compassion like I'm not a
mhm.
monk, I'm not Mother Teresa. And it's like, good, you don't have to be.
Yeah.
It's this idea that I can see, Adam, um, you're going through a human experience.
Mhm,
And I want to lessen the suffering in that.
mhm,
And the action, so the recognition and then the action to do something to lessen. And the lessening isn't it's not rocket science. And
Yeah.
so teaching people how to access that and to find it for themselves, that self-compassion, like we start there in the more philosophy, like meeting
Mm,
people where they are is the M, and you've got to start with meeting yourself where you are. And so that's what we do. We come into
mm,
teams, and we sit them down in groups and we teach them the more philosophy. We talk about the
mm,
brain science. We talk about bias. We talk about all the things that are happening that are keeping us from these really simple concepts. Meeting
mm.
people where they are. We've all heard that a million times. Super easy, right?
Yeah.
So
Easier
yeah,
said than done.
much.
Yes. And actually, I think that's a great transition. So, what we published we published your writing and your philosophy. So the power, or I should say, a piece of it,
Yeah,
the power of more, solving the retention problem by bringing compassion to the workplace. So the M, meet people where they are.
yeah.
The O, open to listen. The R, remove assumption. The E, engage with curiosity.
Yeah.
How was the philosophy developed? Like, tell us a little bit more about the creation and why more.
It's always backwards, Adam. It's always
Mm,
got to be backwards. It was really just breaking down like how did two 20-year-olds
mm,
throwing around weights have a conversation where they were diametrically opposed on the
mm.
things that people hold the tightest: politics,
Yeah.
religion, the things that you can say anything you want, but you can't disagree with my politics. Like
Hmm.
these are the things that we initially disagreed on, and we're like, how did that
Yeah.
happen? Um, and so as we started to pull that apart, we started to understand, oh, well, I was able to meet you where you were by, instead of unleashing my anger and my pain and we were talking about our origin with the Kaepernick
Mm,
story, I asked a question. So I took the curiosity in order to meet Keith and figure out like, well, okay, maybe he's thinking something that I'm not, and I don't know
mhm,
what it is. So let's figure out what that is. And continuing to piece it together to say, okay, well, how did being open to listen more there help? Well, I
yeah.
learned a lot about his family. I learned a lot about his life. I learned about um, it actually gave me the information to remove the assumptions that I was making, because our brains need context. It's
Mm,
why, like, when somebody cuts you off, the first thing you think is they're an a-hole,
yeah.
because we need a story. We need to fill it. There has to be a reason. It can't, and that reason can't be, oh, they just weren't paying attention,
Mm,
or they're in a rush, or any of those things. And as I was listening, I got the context, and the
mm,
context wasn't, I don't like you. It wasn't, I don't care about you. It wasn't, I don't care about people that look like you. It
yeah.
was his own motivation. And so we took all of that and we put it together and made it into the more philosophy. And then we took that and we said, well, like, what happens? So when we do all of these things, what happens? I feel safe. Oh, what happens when I feel safe? I can be vulnerable, like the
Mm,
real vulnerable. Like, I can share what's really happening for me. I can share that I didn't like your response, because I know that you're not going to excoriate me because
mm,
of what I'm feeling or thinking right now. And
mhm,
so when you piece all that together, it's like it creates safety. And that's
mm.
important, because in 20, actually it's funny, in 2016, it's all 2016, Adam. Uh
Yeah.
2016, Google did um, they ran a project Aristotle, and in that project, they were trying to figure out what made their highest performing teams the highest performing teams.
Mm,
And it turns out the number one trait that was common among all the high performing teams,
mhm.
you know what it is?
I don't.
It was psychological safety.
Oh, they felt safe.
They felt safe.
Mm,
All of the lowest performing teams, the number one trait was pragmatism. They were pragmatic. They were
mm,
logical. They were smart. They were thinking about the business, but they weren't thinking about the people. And it turns
mhm,
out we're humans. We're people. So we've got to take care of those so that we can take care of the things that we have to do.
mm.
So that's kind of how we backed into figuring this all out.
At what point, or I should say, how did you figure out that these concepts relate to business and that they would be helpful to other companies, and specifically around retention? Like, how
Yeah,
how did that come about?
man. The so the very first, like, I'll give a quick aside. Like,
Yeah.
the very first thing was, we were playing flag football in college,
Yeah.
and we had a team of very, very, very talented individuals, and
Mm.
we were terrible. First season, we were terrible. We couldn't understand it. Came back, and after talking to people in the off season,
Yeah.
and we started aligning people with where they best fit and where they
Mm.
wanted to be, and then came back and had a championship season. So okay, so that
Wow.
happens in college. Then we're working together in the professional world, and we're starting to see teams we love to be on, teams
Mm.
we hate to be on, people we love to work with. I've had bosses I would run through walls for. I've had
Yeah.
bosses I'll work 90 hours a week for. I've had bosses that I will do the bare minimum for. And I have had
Mhm.
bosses I will do even less than that for.
Yeah.
So in those experiences is where we started to piece together. And then at the same time, we started reading Brene Brown, Simon
Mm.
Sinek. We're researching the brain science around what's happening with these things. Dolly
Mm.
Chugh, NYU professor that studies bias and how it affects the person that you mean to be. That's her first book, The
Mhm.
Person You Mean to Be. It's like, how do these things piece together so that we can build the best teams? And so we're looking at these teams and we're like, one question an exec asked me at a tech firm once. He said, why can't we keep college students?
Mm.
And he was very, very confused. And I was like, this is not hard. Like, none of their needs are met. And they're
Yeah.
looking at their friends at firm X, Y, and Z that are getting their needs met. So they're
Mhm.
leaving. Like, they don't feel any kind of need to stick around and not have their needs met.
Mhm.
And um, and when it comes to retention, people feeling heard and seen and valued is so important. And like, this question comes from founders and CEOs all the
Mhm.
time. Like, well, why is this important? And like, does that mean we have to take the advice of every single person on the team? And say, no, 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 like, that's not what it means.
Mhm.
People want to feel like, that is an operative word, feel heard, seen,
Yeah.
and valued. And we can say that we're hearing them, but people
Mhm.
know when they're heard. And
Mm.
just because you're heard doesn't mean your idea is used. And I think
Mm.
people somewhat conflate those two things. And so having a culture where we honestly
Mhm.
have mechanisms to hear people and see them, especially in the
Mm.
places where they're most suited, right? Like, me giving my opinion on like the operational structure of this company, of my own company, like,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean a lot because that's not a strong suit for me. But
Mhm.
if it was, being able to speak up and be heard, be super valuable. And
Mm.
when people don't have that met, it's almost like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, I
Mhm.
need to feel safe and I need to be able to be heard. And if I can't get those ticked, like, I gotta go.
Yeah.
And people will stick around to get a paycheck only until they don't have to.
Yeah, that's well said. And the idea and the thought of being heard, I guess, in our personal lives, we kind of feel like that need, and it makes sense that that would translate over into our professional lives as well, right?
Yeah.
Especially for people that really care about the organizations that they're working for, which I like to think that most people do.
Yeah.
But you're right. At some point, like over time, sometimes it could be leadership, the organization, other things like that, whatever the reason is that when somebody's feeling less heard, less engaged, like I feel like there's signs, there's different things that can be done. Let's start there. I definitely always like to give our audience some tools or some tips. Obviously, we can't get everything in one particular podcast interview,
For sure.
but what are
Sure.
some things that people can take away today if they want to start heading down that path?
Mm. Well, one just like anecdotal tip,
Mm.
because I think you just said there are some signs, there's some indicators, like,
Mm.
especially with your extremely passionate people, like when they stop talking or when they become quiet,
Mm.
it lets you know there's something happening in the culture,
Mm.
and it's something to start investigating. It's something to start thinking about. And not everybody is going to be like rah excited, and that doesn't mean that they're not engaged. It doesn't mean that they don't care.
Yeah.
Um, But I mean, I'll just walk through the philosophy and just give a couple to like meeting people where they are.
Mm.
When I had a guy come up to me once at a conference in Vegas, I was presenting this, and he's like, and he was Scottish, and I'm not going to butcher the accent.
Please
Like
do.
I
Could
lad,
kill you.
he's like, it's just, it's just common sense. Like, these are the things that my parents taught me. And I agree with him very much. And then I asked him, I was like, but why don't we do them? Because it's so hard. So like meeting people where they are, like thinking to yourself, like when you last time you were in a situation at work where you disagreed with somebody and they're doing that thing where they're repeating back what you said, but they're not repeating what you said. They're repeating the way they heard it, which is basically to like win the point. Like that feeling that you have, like that is a very, it's not a nice feeling. And we do that to people when we do the same thing versus just trying to earnestly and honestly figure out like where are they at? Where are they? Because look, Adam, we're doing this interview. It's 12. It's almost 1 o'clock here on the West Coast. You've been up since I don't know how long. I've been up since like 5 with my kids. And then after we're done with this, you got to go do more interviews and more work, and I got to go do more work. So like I'm getting this itty bitty little sliver of your day, and in this smaller sliver of your week, I don't know what's going on for you. Like I know how you seem to be showing up right now, but I don't know why, other than the fact that you're an awesome podcast host. Like I know that, and you bring energy, but like I don't know if the day's been good or bad without starting to engage and ask questions. So meeting people where they are is so important because we don't know where people are coming from when they come into the room. And our willingness to listen is going to help us understand where they are and like really listen, not like listen so that we can rebut and respond. Because I know like we've never done that.
Well, no, we never have done that.
We've never done that.
So we started off this interview and you mentioned a podcast and that's where it all came from. And for anybody that's been watching this show for any duration of time, they know that I am a huge fan of podcasting, podcasters, and just so much comes out of it. I can't say that.
Oh my goodness.
I can't say that Mission Matters was started from podcasts. It actually, we had books before that as a publishing company. However, the transition to the name Mission Matters did come out of podcasting and a particular interview when one of the guests mentioned, the original name of the company in the show was Money Matters Top Tips, and it was supposed to be a show and also a platform about teaching people about money. And when a particular guest said, mission matters or money matters, but mission matters too, the light went off, and that just went down this whole like spiral of we still have a money show, but the entire platform was then given its true purpose and calling, which is to help others along their mission and to help them get their voice and their message out. So your podcast, man, I want to hear more about it. I want my audience to definitely go check it out. Like what type of content can the listener or viewer expect?
Yeah, and we're actually in the process of rebooting. Like we paused for a year as we've been actually out doing more consulting as we've added that to our repertoire. But the podcast itself is an expression of the More philosophy. It is us creating safe space using those various tools with people that I've met at the airport, with celebrities, with change makers in business, and really like we're exploring their story, but we're using the tools to explore their story. And it's I don't know, like people, the sharing and the level of depth that we've been able to get to with people that we just met. Like it's like, hey, like lights
it's
on.
Shocking, right?
It's amazing. Like it's an addictive thing because like you really get to get in and get to know somebody, get to know yourself. Got to work on your speaking skills. Got to work on your presentation. And like you, I'm a huge fan. I highly recommend it for anybody who thinks they have a thought. Do it.
How many episodes do you have out there? I think you got quite a few, right?
55, 55 right now.
Yeah, that's a legit episode. So over 50, a legit catalog, I mean. So that's I mean, there's a lot of content out there. I know you mentioned you're starting it back up, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't let that deter anybody from
No.
going to check out the current catalog up there. So another way we like to say it is you're coming out with a new season, Rodney. There you
That's
go.
what it is. It was new season in building. We got some fun
Yeah.
stuff planned.
And it's awesome
And
because I'm sure over that last year, there's been a lot of learning as you've been out there consulting with companies, and the perspective and the vision and everything's growing, right?
absolutely. Absolutely it is. And part of the reason why we've paused it is we're bringing some more series similar to this that
Mhm.
are more that speak more to our business audience. I would say the podcast that we have there now speaks to everybody, and it's
Yeah.
very long form content. So we want to start making something a little more digestible
Mhm.
for the busy business folk of the world that just want to get what they need and
Yeah.
get out.
Yeah, it's a great story, and one that I love to bring to my audience. That being said, if somebody, you mentioned consulting, working with different companies, like
Yeah.
who do you find is like what type of companies? I think you mentioned you can even work with individuals in certain cases.
Yeah.
Like what type of companies and or organizations have you found get the most benefit out of working with you and Keith?
I mean, obviously, the answer is yes, all
Hmm.
organizations. But we've been working with an NFL team. We've been
Hmm.
working with some large tech firms
Yeah.
um, and individuals in sport, like high level,
Hmm.
like collegiate sport, um, executives. Like we tend to work when we do our. So I'll come to one on one in a second. So
Hmm.
from an organizational standpoint, like we've worked really all around. What we found is the common theme, the common thread between the
Hmm.
teams that we work with are individuals that are craving growth.
Hmm.
Um, whether the culture is thought of as great or not
Hmm.
is less important because there's always something there. There's always, like, we work in the gray areas
Yeah.
between, hey, everything's great, I love working with you, to, oh my goodness, HR violations every day. We work in
Hmm.
between there because there's so many things that happen that just kind of rub us the wrong way, or we're not sure how to take it or what to do
Yeah.
with it. And all of that unspoken stuff,
Hmm.
that's the culture. That's the
Hmm.
culture that we live in. Like, not just the rules are there and we all know the
Yeah.
rules, but we all live between the rules.
Yeah.
So that's where we work. So teams that are hungry to grow, leaders
Mm.
specifically that are hungry, like, I need content to feed my team so that they can work more efficiently and effectively together. I mean, some of the most impactful feedback, an HR leader at a big team
Mm.
said that they've been watching the members of our cohort for the past year, watching how they move and how they interact with people that were both in the cohort with them and that were
Mhm.
just separate, and their ability to get things done, to
Mm.
solve problems, to get projects done, to work with each other, um, has their ability has gone up. And
Yeah.
she's watching it because she's the one signing the checks, so she wants to know, like, is this effective, is this efficient? And this is why we get to be invited back to do
Mm.
more of this work, because they're seeing the impact. And this is on an individual level
Mm.
and at a business level. um and then, so that's like some of the group work we do, some of the larger cohorts, and then there's the one-on-one coaching. And
Mm.
we've focused this mainly on leaders, owners, execs, founders. We
Mm.
have done some coaches of, like, collegiate sport. And
Mm.
what they found out of this is it is space and time to reflect. All
Mm.
of these people are very hungry for growth. And
Mhm.
the downside of that is they're charging at 120 miles an hour every day.
Mm.
What I do and what Keith does is force them to pause and to
Mm.
turn that lens and look inside and understand where they are. Like, really take that time to break down the things that they're solving, that they're having trouble with,
Mm.
and to understand how they're coming towards it, and inserting the more philosophy to challenge them.
Mm.
And this is I love working with execs because I don't have to pull punches. I can
Yeah.
just go in and say, like, I'm going to challenge that assumption that you just made. and and they can take it and they're like, huh, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
And that has been some of the most powerful feedback we've gotten. We've had an exec talk about talking to their owner and
Mm.
sharing experiences and fears and doubts that they would have never thought they could share, that has just blossomed that relationship and gone to places that they could have never imagined.
Yeah. Man, it's great. It's great. It's a great story. And I can't even imagine where this thing is going. What started from um, the gym really in college and having
Right.
these conversations, a flag football team, your early beta, we'll say, in getting results, all the way up until now, creating a podcast, over 50 episodes of content, creating all these meaningful relationships with corporate leaders, to now affecting corporations and companies, all the way from the top down, right? From everything from working directly with the CEO to working with larger cohorts and different executive teams. I mean, I'm just so proud and excited to see the growth and to follow this journey, because I know, and of course, let me bring out the getting published. So now published authors, both yourself and Keith, and we're going to continue spreading the message. I know we're just kind of releasing the book recently. It's already on the bestsellers list, and we are just promoting. We're just getting started with this thing, and I'm excited to continue to promote not just the book, but also More in Common, and then of course the podcast and the next season that's coming out. But that being said, a lot going on, a lot on your plate. I mean, what's next? What's next for you? What's next for More in Common?
What's next, man? We got more cohorts. We're starting to work on some events, so that's coming. Next season, the podcast is going to be a banger. It's going to be some big guests on location. Wow. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And here's what the journey has been most recently for us. It's like I don't know if you've experienced this, Adam. The thing that you present to the world, or that you do the best, is pretty natural to you. So taking that and explaining that actually requires some analysis and some work, and taking feedback from others. And so we've been honing and like really understanding, what is this thing that we do? How do we create safety? What is the More philosophy, and where does it plug in? And like we're there. And so like the next thing is just like, let it go, like stop hiding the light, and just let it, like, put it out there and go do big things. Because and I know you've experienced this, because your platforms are highly successful. When you get that good feedback, like that amazing feedback after you do the thing, you put yourself out there. Like, I'm going to try this. I hope it works. And then you get the amazing feedback. Like, wow, it's very humbling in a very real way. And so taking that and just building on it, so we can get more of it and spread this idea of compassion to more people. Like, that's what's next.
It's great. Well, Rodney, first off, it's been great having you on the show, and again, thrilled to continue to promote and support what you're doing at More in Common. That being said, if somebody is listening to this or watching this and they want to follow up and they want to learn more, what's the best way for them to do that?
The easiest way is to go to our website, More in Common, ENT, as in entertainment, moreincommon.ent.com. That's the easiest way, because you can get to everything from there. We actually just redid the site, so I'm really excited about it. It's simple and cohesive and clean. Talks about what we do, tells the story, and you can get to the podcast and the socials, all that good stuff from the website. So yeah.
Perfect. And for everybody watching this, we'll put all that information in the show notes, of course, so that you can just click on the links and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters or engaging in an episode, we're all about bringing on business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives, and having them share their mission, the reason behind their mission, why they do what they do, and really what we can all learn from that to grow together. If that's the type of content that sounds interesting or fun or exciting to you, we welcome you. Hit that subscribe button. We have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. Rodney, man, so much fun doing this. Can't wait to the next time we get to work together. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Like he said, hit that button, hit that subscribe. Mission Matters is putting out amazing stuff. And I look forward to coming back again.